Well, to talk more about this, I'm now joined by Simon Hlungwani, who is the president of the Democratic Nursing Organization of South Africa. Good evening, sir. Thanks very much for coming through. So 5% is where it's stuck.
Yeah, let me just say we just had a meeting today at the PSBC, which is our chamber. So the employer is still offering what is not adequate. It has changed from the 5.5% as a inflation target, inflation itself, plus 1.5% for levels 1 to level 7, and then also from level 8 to level 10, then level it's 1%, and then level 11 to level 12 it's 0.5%. But overall is the deal of many issues in a basket. We're not happy with that, so it's affecting. And it's finding a backlog of many issues in the Potchefstroom Hospital. You can imagine working for 4 years and you're not getting your performance bonuses, you're not getting your pay progressions and so on. So this is a backlog of many issues. That includes, amongst the issues, is the fact that when people retire, some who die, they're never replaced in that hospital. So workers are burned out there, and they come up with a new system now. They want to employ a broker who must take employment and replace certain people at that level. But all these things have boiled out into the province trying to engage our provincial leadership in terms of the unions, to engage the province and say, we have an issue here. And they are not showing any signs of good intent. But safe to say, maybe it's because the whole government of the Northwest, seemingly we can call it that it collapsed, that they are not addressing issues.
Well, what do you believe is the reason for their, shall we call it, stubbornness? Is it because they cannot afford, or do you think it's their attitudes? Well, they just don't want to give what they otherwise have to you.
Well, I would think it's that as and when leadership of government must realize that they are public servants and they're supposed to serve as citizens and actually voters of the country. What has gotten into the leadership in certain provinces, and this is what we commonly see, is that due to their own ways of receiving something at the back, then they introduce all these funny things. You can look at the issues of the Midiosa, you can look at the ambulances services that are there. Instead of building capacity within the state, they intend to use the private sector. As a whole, then they don't employ people. So their attitude is informed by how do they make money through these other processes of tenderizing and so on. So that's what is creating the problem. But we don't like the attitude, because that attitude is rendering nurses and everybody vulnerable at the stage, and that's what is causing these problems. And we would want them to come to the table and resolve these matters, pay people what is due. I can also mention that the wage bill itself, they're supposed to ring-fence 1.5% for these particular purpose of payment, pay progressions. But on an annual basis, they misuse that money through these other infrastructure projects. They are relevant, but they mustn't misuse that money that is ring-fenced. Hence, it has now taken a toll for all workers and all employees in the public service.
Now, you've indicated that today they moved somewhat.
Yes, they moved somehow to from 5.5%, which is an inflation, for level 1 to level 7, and it's 5.5% plus 1.5%, which is amounting to around 7% if you look at it. For the levels 6 to 10, they moved to inflation plus 1%, which is 6.5%. And then for level 11 to 12, they moved to 6%. It's inflation plus 0.5%, as what they've tabled for us on the table. We have taken a decision. We're going to consult members, and members are going to guide us on what we must do, because they have said this is their final offer. So for us, that then tells us that when we go back, we can either define, when they have a final offer, what else do we have as a mechanism of dealing, and also to pin them down and see how do we get the outcome that will be befitting for the members of the country.
Okay, this keeps going on. So it's been going on for a while now. You heard there from what people who have patients or relatives who are at the hospital and how they are suffering. Does it worry you at all?
Well, it definitely does worry us. What we can call upon is that management must learn to plan as well. We were informed during the day that after noticing that there's a problem in the hospital would have attempted to discharge those who are stable to go home and leave only those that are critical, and would have utilized management to manage the critical situation at that moment. But the permanent solution is not that one. The permanent solution is to resolve these problems. The pay progressions, the performance incentive bonuses must be paid. But over and above that, we have been negotiating since last year around October. Just imagine how many months it is right now. We're not finding a resolve. And the employer was playing games, moving from that post. Sometimes, at some point, they even regressed from what they offered in January, and they went back. We have never heard of such. But we understand that it could have been contributed by the fact that there's been change in leadership, which led to change in negotiators and so on and so on. But we can't tolerate it anymore, because we're feeling the pinch. The VAT has increased. It never waited for us. And all these other issues that are going to come up with, we're going to feel it. The fuel has increased. So all these things, we are feeling the pinch as employees. That's why we wanted a speedy resolve. We are very sympathetic to the public, and we want this situation to be resolved so that we cannot have patients dying due to any of these circumstances that are prevailing to us. Yeah.
Let's hope there's a speedy resolution indeed. Thanks very much for coming through. Well, Simon Hlungwani is, of course, the president of the Democratic Nursing Organization of South Africa.